and welcome to the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast. I'm your host, Rosa, and today I'm joined by another nurse, Mary Jagim. She is an experienced or seasoned emergency nurse, and she uses her experience to innovate and to solve some of healthcare's most challenging problems. So thank you so much, Mary, for making the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yeah, here on the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast, we're all about talking about solutions. Plenty of people know how to complain, but they don't necessarily provide any ideas on how to make things better. And so, anytime I get wind of somebody who has productive sounding ideas that give us hope, I love to spotlight that to get it closer to reality.
I totally agree.
So, tell me some more about your background in the emergency room. How did you get started as a nurse?
Oh, well, that was many moons ago. But my mother was a nurse, and she was an excellent role model. And I was so inspired by her work and so wanted to follow in her footsteps. So there was never a question in my mind that nursing is what I wanted to do. My mother told me it'd be a lot of hard work, and she didn't lie. So, but I think the rewards have been phenomenal. I spent over 20 years in the emergency department. And during that period of time, I also had an opportunity to be on the Emergency Nurse Association Board of Directors and was the national president in 2001. So, a wonderful opportunity to take ideas and solutions to a bigger scale. During that time frame, when I was in that role, is when things were really starting to heat up in the emergency department in terms of overcrowding, patients boarding. Managers all over the country were just, they didn't have the skills. They didn't know what to do. How can I work to solve these issues? What do I need to know? What do I need to learn? Help me with staffing. How do I figure that out? It's not just about the numbers when these patients stick around for hours and hours and hours, right? It's not just your volumes. You have to take more things into consideration. So during that period of time, really tried to focus on providing emergency nurse leaders with the tools they needed to do their job. So whether it was, we created a course for emergency department managers and directors to help teach them some of the skills they needed. We created a evidence-based staffing tool. I think we're the only specialty nursing organization ever to do that, but to help them to figure out how to staff appropriately in their department. And so we really tried to focus on those types of things so that they were better equipped to deal with some of those challenges. And then, violence has been an ever increasing issue. I was focused on it ever since the mid 90s, actually, 1990s, when we passed legislation in my home state at that time, North Dakota, to make it a felony to assault an emergency department worker because it was just at that point in time, it was so prevalent. And you wouldn't think in North Dakota in the 1990s that was an issue, right? But it was. And it's just ballooned since then. And in particular, after COVID, it's really just become a big issue. So it's those types of challenges in terms of the efficiency and operations of the emergency department, the violence issues. I think those have really shaped and directed my career choices and the pathway that I've taken. And so about 16 years ago, I veered off into the world of real-time location systems as a way to try to meet on some of those challenges because nothing else I tried was working. Process changes weren't working. I tried during my stint with the ENA Board of Directors. I went to Washington, D.C., met with members of Congress, just really tried all avenues. And so I felt like some of the emerging technologies I was seeing was really perhaps the pathway to solve some of the challenges we were facing. And so that's the road I've gone down. And it's been an interesting ride. And just like the emergency department, it's full of challenges on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's really been an exciting place to be and really a place where I've been able to leverage all of my skills and experience.
It's just amazing. And I love how you've obviously been a problem solver from the beginning, from probably having to do nursing workarounds in the ER to
Right.
organizations and then associations and then taking it to the policy governmental level. And as much as we want the rules to reinforce what we need, then we practically have to put things into practice no matter what the rules say, right?
Right.
If the rules would be backing us up. So, what are some of the technologies that you're working with now and how you envision they can help in workplace violence issues? That's not necessarily something I hear about every day.
Yes, well, it's certainly, again, coming from the emergency department background, it was always a part of life in the emergency department when it really shouldn't have been, right? It shouldn't have been something that we had to worry about on a day-to-day basis, but it was. And so we leverage with real-time location systems, different technologies. Sometimes we're using things like infrared. A lot of people think of that as RFID, right? But so infrared technologies, or potentially now we're implementing more leveraging BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy technologies also. But basically, what we want to do is put tools with the nurse so that if they're in a situation where they're feeling threatened, that they have the ability to call for help. Generally, it's hospital security, and that security dispatch officer that's getting that alert knows who and where they're located so that they can dispatch assistance and help hopefully prevent somebody from getting injured and help calm the situation down. And it's just one of the many things that we do with the technologies. But for me, it's the one that's, I think, nearest and dearest to my heart. I think it's just having lived through those experiences myself and feeling that fear, that I don't want other nurses to have to go through that experience. And I want them to feel safe at work so they can focus on the patients instead.
And I hear that fear in your voice. And I know that, it's painful to really relive those memories. But if people haven't been in the hospital with us, sometimes it's hard to imagine what that's like.
Yeah.
Work every day with that as a possibility in the front of your mind. Would you be comfortable sharing like one of those experiences for people who haven't worked in the hospital or may not know what that is like that you're describing?
I mean, I think I worked many, many night shifts. Oftentimes there's less resources on. Maybe you're in a room down at the end of the hallway, not a lot of folks around. You get cornered in a room by a patient. They start to get really agitated. You don't have a way to get out. They're threatening you. They're gonna hurt you. They maybe take a swing at you, and they throw stuff at you. And then I can remember in particular my greatest, I think, fearful situations were when I was pregnant.
Mhm.
And so then I'm not just worried about myself, but I'm worried about my unborn child. And that, I think, added a huge extra layer of fear to those situations. And so it's just, yeah, you shouldn't have to feel that way when you're just trying to help people. That's why nurses go into nursing, right? They want to help people. And it's really been amazing. The numbers have just exploded after COVID. In particular, we're seeing such a rise of incidents in children's hospitals. So not only the children themselves, but also the families. And so yeah, I mean, they're just terrified. And I've been hit, kicked, bit, spit at, called more names than anyone can think of, And I was lucky enough, some of my colleagues have been beaten, received head injuries, they've been stabbed, shot, killed, raped, all of those things. That's the reality that we live with. You see it on the news occasionally, right? You see the shootings in a hospital or right outside of a hospital, where staff have been killed. And while it's getting better, there was also a lot of pushback from the hospitals about they didn't want, they sometimes blamed the nurse. Let's put it that way.
Well, if we want people to stay working as a nurse, they
Right,
need to have safer working conditions.
right.
So, tell us about some of the technology that you found that you think can be helpful in that situation.
Well, as I said, so our company, does real-time, like I said, location systems. And we use either infrared or BLE or combination, basically. So BLE requires a little less, Bluetooth Low Energy requires a little less hardware to implement. Staff are provided a badge similar to this that they can wear. It has a button on the back that they can press to indicate that they're in a duress situation and they're in need of assistance. And this will then generate an alert that goes off, a pop-up window that appears on the workstations of the security dispatchers, and they'll dispatch team members, public safety officers to the site of the staff member who's generated the alert. And, we see it a lot where staff are also generating those alerts when things are starting to escalate. So before it gets to the point where somebody's getting hurt, right? Things are starting to get uncomfortable and threatening. And so they'll generate that event so that they can get more, help comes more quickly. We also often send out local alerts. So staff in the immediate area receive an alert on their mobile device that they're carrying with them. In most places, they have them now. And so the staff in the immediate area can see that one of their colleagues has just generated a staff duress event. And so if they're available, they can go and assist and support that staff person. Those situations where we're able to do that have been very, very successful.
Yeah, that is so helpful too. And a lot of the times, I know we've had security staff who they don't want to come into a situation in a security uniform, which might escalate a situation if there's someone else in scrubs who might be able to come in as another helper to help de escalate the situation with their presence. For example, I know I've heard that verbalized. So I'm glad to hear that it's not just force on force, right? There's a de
Right, exactly.
possible as well from the rest of the team. Also, team members are probably closer.
Exactly. They can usually, I mean, we've done some analysis of our data on this, and generally it's going to take security probably maybe 2 to 3 minutes to get there, depending on where they're at. If it's an emergency department, a lot of the larger emergency departments have security in the department, so probably a little less. But generally, there's another staff member colleague within 30 seconds away from you that can come and provide assistance.
So, have you been able to produce some data that you've been able to publish about this?
We have done some in terms of the effectiveness and that analysis that we provided, again, of showing, the response rate when there's local alerting. One of the things that's been a little bit difficult about providing more evidence base that I would like is the reporting end of things. We need the hospital's assistance to get at some of the data related to actual injuries and medical costs, loss of work, turnover, those types of related things. It's sometimes difficult to get at those pieces of it.
Yeah.
So when you look purely at our alert data, you tend to see it go up, which is a good thing because that means staff are utilizing the system, they're getting help and preventing that
Mm.
injury, but it's often difficult for us to align it with the injury data from the facility. It's one of those things I'm still working on, being able to get really some nice hard data.
Yeah. And I wonder how much, this is just me musing, I wonder how much data that's facility specific you would have to go through the hospital if there are like more overarching trends.
Well, we have been able to tie the data to decrease turnover
Yeah.
and
That's,
staff saying that having that staff safety solution has made a difference for them. So we
yeah.
have been able to provide some correlation there. We've also seen, and this is really awesome, where nurses who are interviewing for positions are asking hospitals about their staff safety solutions as part of the interview process and choosing not to take a job at a place that doesn't have a solution in place.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Every nurse should ask that question in a job interview.
In addition to that, are there any other questions you would recommend a nurse when interviewing for a job?
I think I would ask general policies and resources around this. That should be a telltale sign, around how serious the organization takes staff safety. I think that's really important. I think I would ask about turnover rate, and do they have any information as to why, if it's a high turnover rate, why that is the case. So those kinds of things I think can give you a good idea around the environment that you would be stepping into.
steps have been taken since that rate was obtained to improve it going forward? Yeah, I don't know if that would be something that they'd be willing to share, but I figure it's a compelling question to ask.
Mhm.
It's important to know what you're walking into.
Exactly. They should be able to provide that information, I think.
I hope so. I don't know. I don't work in recruiting, so. So I think that brings us to the $1 billion question. You are already doing really great work that it sounds like is really aligned with your personal values from your work experience. So I know that must be really meaningful. If you were given a grant for $1 billion to meet the needs you've seen in healthcare, how would you like to see it used strategically to have the most sustainable impact?
Well, one, I would want to use it to make sure that all hospitals have implemented some type of staff safety solution so that the staff can feel like they are able to work in a safe environment. That would be number one on my list. Number two is so one of the other reasons behind, I mentioned when I was making the move out of the emergency department was some of that frustration about the crowding and boarding and things like that. And a lot of that I felt was rooted in the overall hospital inefficiency, that the hospital was struggling to figure out how to get patients discharged, how to get beds cleaned, make available for new patients, right? So if the hospital isn't efficient in those overall processes, you're not going to be able to get your admissions out of the emergency department, right? That's what backs things up because the emergency department has an open inlet valve with no obstructions to it, right? I mean, it
It just
just
gonna
keeps
keep coming.
coming. They just keep coming. And but if that outlet valve is stuck or clogged for whatever reason, then the emergency department, as I say, just basically implodes itself, right? Because you've just got patients everywhere and you can't function and move patients through. And so, I would the other thing I'd do with that $1 billion grant would be I'm thinking that there are more opportunities yet, probably where we can utilize AI, more machine learning tools to really be able to help automate some of those things. There are already some tools available where you can, for example, if we have all of the patients where not this type of a badge, but something locator device on them, where if the patient's being discharged, that goes in a Dropbox, triggers a notification that that patient is now discharging, get the bed cleaned. Now it's available for the new patient out of the emergency department. So automating more of those processes and being able to use AI to anticipate those so that we can work on efficiencies around that. Hospitals that have implemented patient flow centers or overall command centers in their facility or within their organization enterprise are really, a good way down that path of being able to figure out how to function more efficiently so that we can get the right patient to the right unit with the right staff and keep things flowing and avoid some of those backups and delays. So, but you really have to put the resources into that and the technology behind it to
Mhm.
be able to be successful with those efficiencies. And the other thing is just, wider spread implementation of basically some of the other tools that we have. We track millions of pieces of hospital equipment and we do that so that patient care isn't delayed because a nurse doesn't have an infusion pump to deliver important antibiotics or some other critical piece of equipment is where it needs to be to meet the needs of that patient and there's no delays. So you don't want, they're so tight on staffing in hospitals these days. You want to allow those nurses to be the most efficient they can be and not to spend time on stuff that having to look for a piece of equipment brings no value to the patient.
If you've got
Just
one
so
or
it's
two
saying.
staff members running all over looking for another
Yeah,
IV because you need a critical drip, there's not
exactly.
a whole lot of wiggle room there. Or,
Exactly.
we have less frequently used items that might get misplaced easily, like a bear hugger they need. to be warmed up, or cooling blanket that they need because they're so feverish they might start seizing. And you don't have those as commonly around. So I know they can get misplaced.
Exactly. So you want it to be easy. I envision a day where, a nurse can go to their phone and say, Siri, where's the closest available whatever you need, and they're going to give you that location and a dot point map if you need it to find it. So I'm looking forward to that day. We're not there yet, but things like that just take away all that wasted energy and allow the nurse to be focused on the patient.
When you say we are not there yet, are there not some hospitals that have implemented that? I think I just read about
We
entirely Apple centric hospital or something.
There are those, and we have the parts and pieces,
Huh?
but it's not
Integrated?
all there where it could be there. You know what I mean? We're just
Well,
not quite all there, but I think we're getting close. The innovation I've seen in the last 2 years is way beyond what I saw in the previous 14.
isn't
So
that
it's been very exciting. And it opens up a lot of new opportunities and new types of solutions, lower cost solutions, which is really great that we can use to implement and you know allow these efficiencies to take place in hospitals. So that's been just a really really exciting to see, and I just look forward to what's yet to come in the very near future.
definitely. And as we talk about like projecting hope on this future, like a hopeful vision of the future, I always think back to watching Star Trek Next Generation. Did you ever watch that?
Hmm, a little bit.
I love how they, like, talked to their computer, like, the
Mhm.
whole ship had a computer, and they interacted with it so seamlessly, and the computer knew where everybody was and where everything
Right.
was. I didn't think about it then, and it didn't seem creepy to me then, but I know a lot of people are like, "I don't wanna be known where I am all the time."
Well,
Well,
my answer to that is, you know what? The hospital can't protect you if they don't know where you are. In this age of random shooters that come into facilities or bomb threats or you name it, if they don't know where you are, they can't protect you.
yeah,
And so I Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense to be able to know where all of your resources are and all of your patients are so that you can keep them safe.
and your staff,
Yep,
your
right.
nurses.
All of your staff resources. Yep,
Yes.
exactly.
Gotta use the technology to augment our abilities and also protect our humanity.
Right? I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Reality. So, I'm glad that there is so much awareness being brought to it now so that we can have these hard conversations so we can make it better, because sweeping things under the rug doesn't solve the problem.
No, not at all.
So, if people want to learn more about Centrac, or reach out to you to hear more about your thoughts on the matter, where can they reach you, Mary?
Well, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, so that's certainly an option. Mary Jagim. I think I'm a one of a kind, so sorry to get me confused with somebody else.
Oh, and I'll have a link to your profile in the show notes for you.
Okay,
So
great.
right there.
And the website for our company is centrak.com. So CENTRAK.
Mhm.
So easy to find us there. And you can see some of the innovative technologies that we're using every day and some of the things that are coming down the pike. It's a very, very exciting time. And hopefully, we're making a difference for staff.
Oh, definitely. And you can see the value that you bring to it as a nurse with lived experience
Yeah.
as to developing a practical solution. So thank you so
I
much for
I
doing that.
recently, if I could just share a little story, I recently had an experience where I was in one of the facilities we work with, and a young nurse was asking some questions of her manager about the badge. I happened to be kind of in the vicinity and there, and she said, "This is the best thing the hospital has ever done for us." And that was like, oh man, yeah, that's why I do this.
You're part of it.
Yeah, yeah, to help her to feel safe at work. And especially a young nurse just coming into the field. You don't want, you want them to feel supported. You don't want them to not feel like nobody's there helping them to stay safe and watching over them. You want them to feel supported and feel safe, so that they get off to a good start.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, if I've been listening to this and you've enjoyed this episode of the Nurse Rosa's Insights podcast, be sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, or if you're watching on YouTube, and make sure you comment if you have any feedback, if you have additional comments or questions. And if you know someone else who has solutions for the problems we face in healthcare, please send them my way, because I love to spotlight people who have good ideas. And you can find my contact information in the show notes as well. I'm on all the social media platforms at Nurse Rosa Speaks, and I'll see you in the next episode.